Los Angeles, March 1970. A private training session at Bruce Lee's home in Bel Air. Bruce Lee asks Chuck Norris a question that stops the workout cold. In a real fight, life or death, could you actually kill someone with your hands? What Chuck says in the next 8 minutes doesn't just answer the question. It reveals a darkness Bruce never suspected, creates a moment of truth that changes their friendship, and exposes the difference between martial arts as sport and combat as survival. This is the conversation that was never supposed to be recorded, never meant to be shared, but that everyone in their inner circle remembers as the day they understood who Chuck Norris really is. Bruce's home gym is a converted garage. Nothing fancy, just functional space with training equipment, heavy bags, wooden dummies, mirrors on one wall, mats covering concrete floor, windows open to the California afternoon, eucalyptus smell drifting in, birds chirping, the peaceful atmosphere contrasting sharply with the violence they practice here. It's 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee train together once a week, have been for 2 years, ever since they met at Ed Parker's tournament. They're friends, not close but respectful, two warriors who recognize each other's skill, who push each other to improve. Bruce is 29, Chuck is 30, both at the peak of their physical abilities, both world-class fighters, both legends in the martial arts community. They're working on trapping hands, Bruce showing Chuck a Wing Chun technique, rapid hand movements designed to control an opponent's arms, create openings for strikes. It's technical, precise, requires perfect timing and sensitivity. They drill it for 20 minutes, then take a break, sit on the mat, drink water, talk. The conversation starts normal. Tournament news, mutual students, training philosophies. Bruce mentions he's been talking to film producers, trying to get action roles, wants to show real martial arts to American audiences. Chuck encourages him, says Bruce's speed on camera will blow people's minds. They talk about fight choreography, how to make real techniques look good on film without hurting actors. Then Bruce gets quiet, thoughtful. He's looking at his hands, flexing his fingers, that faraway look he gets when he's processing something deep. Finally he says, "Chuck, can I ask you something serious?" Chuck says, "Of course." Bruce says, "You were in the Air Force, stationed in Korea, right?" Chuck nods, says, "Yes, 4 years, military police." Bruce asks, "Did you ever see combat? Real combat, not training?" Chuck's expression changes, subtle shift, the warmth leaving his eyes, replaced by something harder, older. Says, "Some." Bruce nods, doesn't push. They sit in silence for 30 seconds. Then Bruce asks the question that changes everything. Says, "In your training, in our sparring, you hold back. Everyone does. We're not trying to hurt each other. But I've wondered sometimes, in a real situation, life or death, could you actually do it? Could you kill someone with your hands?" The question hangs in the air. Chuck doesn't answer immediately, just looks at Bruce, assessing the question, deciding how honest to be. Finally he says, "Why are you asking?" Bruce says, "Because I don't know if I could. I've trained my whole life. I can strike with enough force to cause serious damage. I know the targets, the techniques, but there's a difference between knowing and doing. I've never been in a situation where I had to find out. You have." Chuck is quiet for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is different, flatter, no emotion, just facts. Says, "Korea, 1960. I was 20 years old, military police, stationed at Osan Air Base. Most of my job was routine, breaking up bar fights, handling drunk airmen, standard MP stuff. But sometimes we'd get sent to assist ROK forces, Republic of Korea military, when there were infiltration attempts near the base." Bruce leans forward, listening intently. Chuck continues, says, "One night, 2 a.m., we got a call. Someone had killed 2 Korean guards at a checkpoint, 3 miles from base, stolen weapons, disappeared into the hills. ROK forces were pursuing but needed our help securing the perimeter, making sure whoever it was didn't get onto the base. My partner and I took a jeep to the northwest fence line, an area backing onto dense woods, no lights, no visibility." Chuck pauses, drinks water, continues, "We parked, started walking the fence line with flashlights, checking for breaches. My partner went left, I went right. Standard procedure, stay in radio contact. About 10 minutes in, I heard something in the woods, maybe 30 feet beyond the fence. Movement, brush crackling. I called out in Korean, identified myself, ordered whoever it was to show themselves. No response, just more movement, getting closer. Bruce is completely still, barely breathing, absorbed in the story. Chuck says, I drew my weapon, ready to fire if needed. But then I saw him, coming through the trees, moving fast, not running but aggressive, deliberate. North Korean infiltrator, maybe 25 years old, dressed in dark civilian clothes but carrying a rifle, the one stolen from the guard. He saw me, raised his weapon. Chuck's voice stays flat, clinical. Everything slowed down, the way people describe it. I had maybe 2 seconds to decide. Shoot him, which would alert the whole base, start an international incident, require reports and investigations, or handle it another way. I made a choice. I holstered my weapon, stepped through a gap in the fence, moved toward him before he could process what I was doing. He was confused, expected me to shoot or take cover, didn't expect me to close distance. By the time he understood, I was inside his guard. I grabbed the rifle, twisted it away, used the momentum to put him off balance. He tried to strike me, got one hit to my ribs, hard enough to bruise but not enough to stop me. I put him in a chokehold, rear naked choke, the kind that cuts blood flow to the brain, causes unconsciousness in about 10 seconds if applied correctly. Chuck stops talking, just stares at the floor. Bruce waits. Finally Bruce asks quietly, did you let him go unconscious? Chuck looks up, meets Bruce's eyes, says no. I held it for 30 seconds. Then I felt him stop struggling, felt his body go completely limp. I held it for another 20 seconds after that to be sure. The silence is absolute. Bruce's face shows shock, processing what Chuck just admitted. Chuck says, I dragged his body deeper into the woods, radioed my partner, said I found the weapon dropped near the fence but no infiltrator, must have fled. Recovery team found the body 3 days later, ruled it death by misadventure, assumed he got lost and died from exposure. Nobody ever connected it to me. Nobody asked. Bruce says very quietly, you killed him. Chuck says yes. Bruce asks, did you have to? Could you have just let him pass out, taken him prisoner? Chuck says, maybe, probably, but I made a calculation. If I took him alive, he'd be interrogated, could reveal information about his unit, their plans, but it would also create diplomatic complications, investigations, questions about why I engaged him alone instead of calling for backup. In that moment, it seemed cleaner to make sure he couldn't complicate things. Bruce says, he trails off, searching for words. Chuck says, cold, brutal. Yes, it was. I was 20 years old and I killed a man with my hands because it was convenient, because it avoided paperwork. That's the truth. Chuck continues, voice still flat. You asked if I could do it. The answer is yes. I know I can because I already did. You asked if I could kill someone in a life or death situation. That situation wasn't life or death for me, Bruce. I was armed, trained, had backup minutes away. I could have handled it differently, but I chose the permanent solution. That's who I was at 20. That's what I live with. Bruce is struggling with this. You can see it on his face. He's trained with Chuck for 2 years, sparred with him hundreds of times, considers him a friend, a good man. This story doesn't fit that image. He says, Chuck, why are you telling me this? Chuck says, because you asked a real question, and you deserve a real answer. You want to know if you could kill someone. Here's what I learned. The physical act is easy. Everything we train, all these techniques, they work. A properly applied chokehold kills in about a minute. A strike to the throat can crush the larynx. These aren't theories, they're facts. The hard part isn't the technique, it's the decision. And once you make that decision, once you cross that line, you don't come back the same. I've spent 10 years trying to be a different person than I was that night, teaching martial arts as discipline, not violence, building schools that emphasize respect and control. I compete in tournaments with rules and referees specifically because it's the opposite of what I did. But that night is always there, always in the back of my mind. The memory of feeling another human being's life end in my hands and knowing I chose it. Bruce asks, have you told anyone else about this? Chuck says, my wife knows, and now you. That's it. Bruce asks, Why me? Chuck says, because you're asking the right questions. You're thinking about the reality behind the techniques. Most martial artists never do. They play fight, they spar, they break boards, they never confront what these skills actually mean. You're different. You want to understand the whole truth. This is part of the truth. Bruce sits with this for several minutes. Finally he says, I asked if you could kill someone. You answered by telling me you already did, and that it haunts you. That's not the answer I expected. Chuck says, what did you expect? Bruce says, I expected you to say yes confidently. Maybe reference your training or military background. I didn't expect regret. Chuck says, that's the part they don't teach in martial arts schools. They teach you how to strike, how to defend, how to win fights. They don't teach you how to live with the consequences of winning. That infiltrator had a family, a life, a story I'll never know. I ended all of that because it was expedient. The technique was perfect. The execution was flawless, but the decision was wrong. And I've spent 10 years understanding that being capable of something doesn't mean you should do it. Bruce says slowly, so when we train, when we drill these techniques, you're thinking about this? About the difference between capability and choice? Chuck nods, says, every time. Every technique I teach, I think about its real application, its real consequences. I teach it because knowledge is better than ignorance, but I also teach restraint, control, the responsibility that comes with these skills. Bruce asks, do you think less of yourself for what you did? Chuck considers this, says I think I'm more aware of what I'm capable of, the good and the bad. That night showed me I can make the wrong choice under pressure, that my training and discipline don't automatically make me a good person, they just make me an effective person. The rest is up to me. The conversation sits heavy between them. Bruce says thank you for telling me, for being honest. Chuck says you asked a serious question. You deserved a serious answer. Bruce says it changes how I think about training, about what we're really doing here. Chuck says good, it should. These aren't games. These skills have weight. They don't train anymore that day. Just sit in the garage gym, processing thinking. Before Chuck leaves, Bruce says that question you asked earlier, why I wanted to know if you could do it. I think I was really asking if I'm prepared for real violence, if my training is complete. Your answer taught me that preparation isn't just physical, it's moral. It's knowing when not to use these skills. Chuck says that's the lesson I learned too late. You're learning it now. That makes you smarter than I was. Bruce says or you taught me before I had to learn it the hard way. They shake hands. That understanding between them deeper now, more complex. Bruce never asks Chuck about combat again. But their training changes, becomes more philosophical, less focused on technique and more on principle. Bruce develops ideas that will later become Jeet Kune Do, emphasizing adaptation and personal expression, but also responsibility and restraint. Years later, after Bruce dies, Chuck is asked in an interview about his friendship with Bruce Lee, what he learned from training together. Chuck says Bruce taught him that martial arts is art, not just fighting, that the goal is self-improvement, not destruction. He doesn't mention the conversation, doesn't tell the story of the infiltrator. Some truths stay private, but people close to Chuck know that day changed him, that admitting what he did to someone he respected forced him to confront it fully, to commit to being better. The martial arts legend, the action star, the American icon, all of that is built on a foundation of knowing what he's capable of and choosing differently. So here's the question. What are you capable of that you choose not to do? What power do you have that you deliberately restrain? Because capability without choice is just violence. Capability with choice is wisdom. Chuck Norris knew he could kill someone because he already had. He spent the rest of his life choosing not to, teaching others the same restraint, building a legacy based on discipline and control. That's real strength. Not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to build instead. 8 minutes of truth between two legends in a garage gym in Bel Air. 8 minutes that defined what martial arts mastery actually means. Not perfect technique, but perfect choice. Who are you becoming with your capabilities? And what are you choosing not to do?